From WDAV Classical Public Radio, welcome to Amnon Weinstein's Violins of Hope, live in Charlotte. I'm Sam Van Holgren. For 2 weeks in April 2012, Charlotte, North Carolina played host to 18 miraculous instruments. 70 years after being silenced by war and the Holocaust, the violins were restored, their stories resurrected, and their music shared once more. Coming up, the Violins of Hope in concert. Israeli virtuosos Shlomo Mintz and Hagai Shaham and many others play music by Vivaldi and Brahms, Gideon Klein, Ernest Bloch, and more, in 2 concerts recorded during the instrument's North Carolina residency. Amnon Weinstein's Violins of Hope, live in Charlotte. On April 15, 2012, Israeli master violin maker Amnon Weinstein took the stage at Charlotte, North Carolina's Night Theater and introduced himself.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I humbly stand here, son of Moshe and Golda Weinstein from Vilna, trying to tell you a story about violins of hope. Handmade wooden instrument which played a better role than many in saving lives in 1,000 different ways. In the last few years, I'm dedicated to the research of history of the war through violins, trying to understand what cannot be imagined. I searched the instruments everywhere, digging them out of oblivion like pearls out of ashes. Each violin has a story to tell. It stands for a girl, a boy, or adult whose family is lost and memory forgotten.
In April 2012, Amnon Weinstein's 18 Violins of Hope made their North American premiere during a 2-week residency in Charlotte, presented by the UNC Charlotte College of Arts and Architecture. The residency was part exhibition, part lecture, and part performance. The violins, witnesses to one of history's greatest tragedies, were played in 5 public performances during their stay. The April 15, 2012 concert Restoring Hope, Amnon Weinstein and the Violins of Hope opened with Vivaldi, his concerto for 4 violins in B minor. Antonio Vivaldi's Concerto for 4 violins in B minor, from the April 15, 2012 concert Restoring Hope, Amnon Weinstein and the Violins of Hope. You heard Chad Hoops, Paco Montalvo, Julia Huang, and Israeli virtuoso Shlomo Mintz, violins, playing with UNC Charlotte Chamber Orchestra, conducted by Giacomo Byros. I'm Sam Van Holgren. This is Amnon Weinstein's Violins of Hope, live in Charlotte. So as the opening work in a night devoted to a story of hope restored and lives resurrected through music, maybe you're asking yourself, why music from the early 18th century? Why Vivaldi? Vivaldi's concerto for four violins is among his most compositionally innovative, part of his Lestro Armonico, or harmonic inspiration concertos, composed in 1711. Vivaldi and his music exist in the early chapters of a great musical narrative, a narrative interrupted by a terrible silence during and in the years following the Second World War. The violins of hope, witnesses to war and to the Holocaust, are a means of replacing that silence with music, with life. Here's Weinstein.
What I'm saying always, when you are listening to the sound, if you are a good listener, you can hear what they can tell you. Because what they have seen, they cannot say in words. They can say it in sound only. So what we are trying to do, to keep the sound like an evidence for the next 1,000 years, I hope so.
But in order to understand the scope of what was lost, but it was not the only tragedy that Jewish musical tradition suffered. Before the war, music had been a source of joy and celebration and a means of escape, however fleeting, from oppression and prejudice. But during the war, Nazis used music in twisted and perverse ways, particularly in prison camps. Between 1940 and 1943, there were 5 orchestras operating in Auschwitz. A men's orchestra played near the entrance to the main camp, and at Birkenau, the Auschwitz death camp, musicians often played during executions. Some of these players survived, but for many, the music did not. Here's Amnon Weinstein.
So you are playing and you see all these things. Can you play after the violin or the cello or any other instrument? Never ever. To my knowledge, from the people who played, never played again after the Holocaust. Never.
Perhaps the most famous of the orchestras that played at Auschwitz-Birkenau was the Women's Orchestra, led by famed violinist Alma Rosé. Rosé was born at the turn of the 20th century in what was then the world capital of music, Vienna. Her family was a musical one, famously musical. Her uncle was Gustav Mahler. Her father, Arnold Rosé, was the founder and conductor of the era's most famous quartet, the Rosé Quartet. So it's perhaps no surprise that Rosé herself achieved fame in the 1930s as a violinist and then as the conductor of a touring women's orchestra, the Waltzing Viennese Girls.
Only thing that stayed exactly is a little violin. The same. Okay, we have other string, we have this, but this is the same violin for the last 500 years. And when you listen to the sound, you know that this is the last sound that people heard before the march to death. Listen to that. We don't have the voices of these people. Almost no photos, only the old photos before the war. And then you have the sound. And you have to think about it. This is the last things that people heard.
That's Amnon Weinstein. The timelessness of this sound, the sound of the violin, is the reason that Weinstein's Violins of Hope is not just an exhibit, artifacts rescued from a tragic time and place. Weinstein's work isn't done until the instruments are played, in concert. In some cases, this means taking, for example, a klezmer violin, originally built for entertaining 10 or 20 people in a small room, and transforming it into an instrument capable of filling a 5,000-seat concert hall. And to do this can sometimes take months, or longer. From the stage of Charlotte's 1,200-seat Night Theater, Weinstein showed the audience a violin decorated with 5 Stars of David. The violin was made by Yakov Zimmermann, a violin maker working at the turn of the 20th century in Basel, Switzerland. According to Weinstein, Zimmermann was one of the very first Jewish violin makers in Europe. As for the original owner of the violin, no record exists to tell us. But based on the violin's elaborate decoration and the condition in which he found it, Weinstein does his best to imagine him.
It was made for a klezmer who I assume was happy and energetic, but the war put tragic mark on the violin. It is easy to detect that it was played upon outdoor, in severe weather condition, in rain and freezing snow. I cannot begin to imagine what stories the violin could tell us if it were able to talk in words, yet it can talk or rather sing in sound, having been witness to the horrors of war. It may have been the last human sound that people marching to their death were able to hear. This violin was brought to me hopelessly broken to pieces. It took me a year and a half to repair, to put its broken bone together again, to fit its head and belly together and reconstruct the sound and beauty. It was with a bit of love that we glued it. With much care, we put it back to life so it could be played and tell us a bit of what he had witnessed and didn't understand.
In 2008, that klezmer violin made an emotional trip back to Europe, to a place Amnon Weinstein long vowed he would never go, to Auschwitz.
I swear to God not to go to Auschwitz and not to go to Vilna. Impossible for me. My family.
Weinstein's parents were from Vilna, now Vilnius, Lithuania. They emigrated to Israel in 1938. Weinstein's sister once tried to find out how many members of the Weinstein family who stayed behind were killed in the Holocaust. She counted close to 400. When he was a boy, Weinstein would ask his parents about his family, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins. Where were they, he'd ask. Eventually, after much prodding, Weinstein's mother showed him pictures of the Vilna ghetto and the Ponar Forest massacre, a site of some 70,000 Jewish deaths. This is your family, she told him. For that 2008 trip to Auschwitz, Weinstein was joined by the Israeli virtuoso violinist Shlomo Mintz. Weinstein and Mintz met as teenagers and have been friends for half a century. Mintz has often been the first to play Weinstein's restored violins. It was early winter when Weinstein and Shlomo Mintz arrived at Auschwitz. Shlomo Mintz played twice, once near the camp's entrance, where the men's orchestra had played morning and night in all conditions, and then again at Birkenau, on the site where Alma Rosé's women's orchestra had played.
It was very cold, and I have to tell one thing. This guy, Shlomo, is crazy. Because in Birkenau he played with a summer suit, thin like, I don't know what, like paper. I was covered like I'm going to Siberia, and he was playing like God. And to play like that in this place, I don't know what to say. You have to be something, it was big.
Just standing there to try to imagine how it was, you have very powerful thoughts and very powerful emotions.
Shlomo Mintz.
Just going through even a few minutes of what a player was actually going through was enough to give you a strikingly powerful and frightening glimpse of how it all happened. And it's something that you never forget. It's something that you never forget.
The music Mintz played at Auschwitz and at Birkenau was the second movement Negun, from Ernest Bloch's Baal Shem, 3 Pictures of Hasidic Life. Bloch's music, written in 1923, evokes a Jewish style of improvisation deeply connected to themes of Jewish spirituality. It was also one of the first pieces of music that Mintz learned as a young prodigy. His first teacher, Ilona Feher, was herself a Holocaust survivor.
For us it was a moment that I will never forget this. I can see it every moment of it, every second, in all my life. This was maybe the victory over evil. To play there with the violence that was in the Holocaust,